Welcome to the Global Truth Podcast with Dr. Nasir Baig. Zionization of the Western society has been one of the key events of modern era. It has covered quite a journey, and now we are probably looking at some phenomenon which we can term as the De-Zionization of the West. So the entire journey, how it started and where it is now, let's talk about it today. The modern state of Israel did not appear overnight. Its blueprint was drafted in the late 19th century by Theodor Herzl, the father of political Zionism, who argued that Jewish safety required a sovereign nation state, but a blueprint requires capital and empire. Enter the patronization of the movement. The fabulously wealthy Rothschild banking dynasty began heavily funding early Jewish agricultural colonies in Ottoman-controlled Palestine. The ultimate imperial breakthrough came in 1917 with the Balfour Declaration. Remember, First World War had not yet ended, and no Holocaust had taken place either. Still, the British government promised its support for a national home for the Jewish people. When the Ottoman Empire collapsed, the League of Nations handed Great Britain the British mandate over Palestine, legalizing systematic mass migration. By 1948, following the horrors of Holocaust, the United Nations partitioned the land. Israel declared its independence, sparking a war that resulted in the Nakba, the catastrophe, where over 700,000 Palestinians were violently expelled from their ancestral homes, creating a stateless refugee population that persists to the day. While Harry Truman recognized Israel instantly for domestic political reasons, the ironclad US military and strategic patronization truly began under Lyndon B. Johnson in the mid-60s, solidifying after Israel's sweeping victory in the 1967 Six-Day War. Washington came to view Israel as a Cold War asset, Western fortress in the oil-rich Middle East, an American outpost in West Asia, making sure none of the oil-rich Gulf countries tilt towards the Soviet Union. But American patronage wasn't merely geopolitical. It was theological. In the early 20th century, a massive shift occurred in American Protestantism with the publication of the Scofield Reference Bible. Historical evidence connects the funding of its author Cyrus Scofield's lavish European travel and research directly to Zionist-linked patrons, including ties to the Rothschild network via New York's elite Lotus Club. What Scofield produced was a theological Trojan horse. The Scofield Bible featured a revolutionary layout where the margin notes and footnotes were far more elaborate, expansive, and visually prominent than the actual biblical text itself. Scofield used these massive margins to weave in a specific philosophy called dispensationalism. It boldly reinterpreted the scripture to claim that modern secular Jews are the sole heirs to God's physical promises. It popularized the belief that Palestine is a promised land, reserved exclusively for Israel. Under this framework, Genesis 12:3, I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, became a literal US foreign policy directive. For millions of evangelical Christian voters, supporting Israel became a divine command. To stand against Israel is to stand against God. Yet, the relationship suffered severe hidden fractures. In 1967, during the Six-Day War, Israeli fighter jets and torpedo boats attacked the USS Liberty, a US Navy intelligence ship, killing 34 American servicemen. Despite survivors insisting the attack was deliberate, it was quietly swept under the rug by Washington. Conspiracy theories also point to Israel's shadow over the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Historians document that JFK was locked in a bitter, fierce standoff with his Israeli Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion over Dimona, Israel's secret nuclear program. JFK demanded international inspections. Israel refused. While mainstream history attributes JFK's death to Lee Harvey Oswald, the intense nuclear dispute fueled decades of speculation that Israeli intelligence was involved. Well, Israel had to make sure that this doesn't happen. To ensure American dissent remained impossible, the lobby institutionalized. Founded in 1954 as the American Zionist Committee for Public Affairs, it rebranded in 1959 as AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. Though under the Foreign Agents Registration Act of 1938 known as FARA, an entity that lobbies the United States government primarily to advance the diplomatic or political objectives of a foreign principal, is legally required to register as a foreign agent. Yet, despite being founded by an explicit lobbyist for the Israeli government, AIPAC has famously used legal maneuvers to avoid FARA registration because it claims to be an organization funded by American citizens. It operates domestically without the strict transparency, labeling, or legal restrictions imposed on other foreign nations. And in turn, AIPAC weaponized the American system of political action committees, or PACs, which pool campaign contributions to elect pro-Israel politicians and aggressively unseat critics. In American politics, money is destiny. Statistically speaking, historical data shows that 94% of the time, the candidate who spends the most money wins the election. AIPAC took advantage of this reality to construct a highly effective political weapon. The mechanism functions as a continuous financial loop. It begins when the US government provides billions of dollars in taxpayer-funded military aid to Israel annually, a baseline historically anchored at $3.8 billion, which scales drastically higher during active conflicts. This massive influx of US taxpayer cash absorbs Israel's heavy defense and military burdens. By taking this financial weight off Israel's shoulders, it frees up vast amounts of institutional and private wealth within global pro-Israel networks. The freed up capital is then funneled directly back into domestic US politics. It is pumped back into the elections via AIPAC and its powerfully connected super PACs such as the United Democracy Project. These organizations, they use the money to fund the campaigns of compliant politicians while aggressively bankrolling the opponents of any critic. This ensures that both the House and the Senate remain heavily aligned with pro-Israel policies, creating a self-perpetuating compliance loop where US aid effectively funds the political survival of the lawmakers who approve it. The rule in Washington became absolute. Any candidate, whether Democrat or Republican, who questions this alliance or dares to advocate for an America First foreign policy finds their career instantly targeted. In primary elections, AIPAC routinely funnels record-breaking amounts of cash directly to a chosen opponent. We saw this explicitly play out in historic multi-billion-dollar primary unseatings. Incumbents who labeled Israel's military actions a genocide found themselves facing an unprecedented financial onslaught, losing their seats to heavily funded pro-Israel challenges. This political stranglehold has created a profound economic irony that leaves the average American taxpayer entirely left out. As American infrastructure crumbles and citizens sink into medical debt, their tax dollars subsidize a foreign country with an arguably superior state-backed safety net. Consider the baseline realities of everyday life. In the United States, healthcare is largely tied to private employment, making medical bankruptcy a rampant crisis for ordinary families. In Israel, universal healthcare is guaranteed by law to every resident under national health insurance. When it comes to higher education, American youth are drowning under trillions of dollars in collective, crushing student loan debt. Meanwhile, Israel provides heavily subsidized, near-free university tuition for its citizens. The gap extends to the housing crisis and general standard of living. While major American cities face historic housing shortages and rising homelessness, Israel maintains robust state-backed housing assistance program. Even statistically, citizens in Israel enjoy a longer average lifespan than the very American taxpayers who fund their defense system. The cognitive dissonance reached its surreal peak during a joint session of Congress, where Benjamin Netanyahu, a foreign prime minister, was handed a staggering 26 standing ovations from American lawmakers. To an outside observer, it didn't look like a meeting of allies. It looked like an occupied government paying mandatory homage. For decades, any attempt to call out this dynamic was met with immediate career-ending charges of anti-Semitism. The corporate media landscape, anchored by dominant networks and tech conglomerates heavily influenced by Zionist executives, ensured that the default public consensus remained strictly pro-Israel. The dissident right and the new media landscape rose from here. The decades of manufactured consensus require information monopolies. And in the digital age, monopolies shatter. The devastating civilian toll of military operations in Gaza, accelerating rapidly over the past decade and peaking in the catastrophic destruction following October 2023, was broadcast directly to millions of smartphones via decentralized platforms, bypassing corporate news filters. Simultaneously, a massive shift occurred on the American political right. High-profile, highly influential alternative media figures such as Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and right-wing firebrands like Nick Fuentes began breaking the ultimate taboo. They didn't just criticize Israeli military actions, they openly questioned the basic dual loyalty of Washington's ruling class, asking why the border of Israel is treated as more important to American politicians than the southern border of the United States. This rhetoric radically altered the political landscape. By framing the issues as a choice between American taxpayers and a foreign government, they uncoupled support for Israel from conservative patriotism. While public sentiment shifted in America, the diplomatic fabric tore open in Europe too. In an unprecedented wave of diplomatic defiance, prominent Western European nations including Spain, Ireland, Norway, France, Slovenia officially recognized the state of Palestine, breaking directly with the decades of US dictated consensus. The Zionists' desperate pushback only made their influence more glaringly visible. In the United Kingdom, investigative journalism exposed the staggering scale of the Israel lobby's reach, revealing that a massive percentage of sitting members of parliament across both the Labour and Conservative parties have accepted funding, travel, or organizational backing from pro-Israel groups. But rather than enforcing compliance, these revelations have sparked widespread public outrage, lifting the veil on how foreign interests shape Westminster. What we are witnessing today is a historical anomaly. The near total de-Zionization of Western societies, existing alongside the total paralysis of Western governments. Despite billions spent on sophisticated public relations apps, targeted digital propaganda, and tech mogul-backed censorship initiatives, the cultural war has been lost. The traditional media empires, long relied upon to protect Israel's image, are failing to convince a younger generation that watches real-time events on decentralized platforms. The International Criminal Court's pursuit of arrest warrants for Israel's leaders like Benjamin Netanyahu for war crimes has permanently altered the legal landscape. Yet, Western executive offices, bound by campaign finance, military contracts, and historical inertia, continue to supply weapons, issue vetoes, and maintain business as usual. But empires are lagging indicators. The foundational psychological pillars of Zionism in the West have permanently eroded. The public no longer views Israel through the romanticized lens of a besieged underdog, but rather as a heavily subsidized occupying power. The public no longer views Israel through the romanticized lens of a besieged underdog, but rather as a heavily subsidized occupying power. The playing of the historic victim card no longer works. When the world is watching the victims, it leaves behind. The political elite may hold the levers of power for now, but the populations they govern have already checked out. The era of unquestioned Western Zionism is coming to a close, and we all are witnessing it. What do you think about it? Let me know in the comments. Take good care.